Yeah, my boys aren't allowed to use those fingers.
No comment. Okay. All right. Hey everyone, Joey Altruda here, along with Senor Amor, Otto von Stroheim, and Joe Cheezee, the artist formerly known as Joey Cheezee. Pardon for the ding-donging, but people are still coming into this room. This is really amazing because, you know, we would be doing this even if there wasn't such a thing as a COVID. We would just be doing this, correct? Unless there was no technology to do it, unless there was, we just all meet up at Tiki Oasis. But this is kind of like volume 2 of where we started with our retrospective about Ellie's lounge scene of the 90s and how it encompassed major cities in the US and probably in Europe as well. You know, let's not leave any stones unturned. And the first installation was a little round table between me and Joe Cheezee and Senor. And we had such a good time, we decided to go live with it. We did this a couple months ago, posted to my YouTube channel. You can go there if you haven't seen it, to Jump with Joey Altruda. I believe that's it. Or yeah, Jump with Joey Altruda YouTube channel. So that's a whole mouthful to spit out. So, hey, I'm super excited to be here with everybody and see all your lovely faces. It's been a while, and well, where do we want to start? This is kind of a loosey-goosey, you know, casual roundtable discussion. I think I would like to start with LA, early 90s. We could backpedal a bit into how, you know, this happened. A lot of it is already discussed in the first episode, but Joey Cheezee came to Los Angeles around 1990, I believe, right? 91 from the Bay Area. And I had read an article about him, and I don't know where I read it, but I read it, and it was about this guy, Joey Cheezee, in the Velveeta Underground. And we have a lot of ground to cover here, so I don't want to, I want to keep things as truncated as I can. Anyways, I thought, well, this is really cool. There's this guy doing this fun lounge act. And at the time, I was the booker and musical director at a club called King on 6th and La Brea. Many of you already know that you made the scene there. It was a really fun place of culture and music and great people. And one evening, I had a band every Wednesday night, Jump with Joey, ska revival, swing, jump swing music, some years before the swing revival took off in LA. And Joe Cheezee came up to me and introduced himself. I'm like, oh, you're Joey Cheezee, right? Velveeta Underground. And so he was looking for guys or people to be in his band. He had a gig. And so he hired me and Jump with Joey personnel to be his crew at a place called Kelbo's in Santa Monica. And it was a throwback. It was like what was not a throwback, but a holdover of like the Tiki Polynesian themed restaurants that was still going. And, you know, that's, I think, where I kind of got into doing lounge music. It's all, you're the guy to blame here. So I was wondering today, how did you and Senor meet? Because at the same time at 6th and La Brea, across the street was a flower store called Rita Flora, and Senor worked there to support his radio DJ habit at the time. I think that's how we actually became friends, because we were always hanging out there. So how did you and Joe Cheezee meet? Did you meet before he moved to LA? How did that transpire?
We ran into each other at Polly's Pies, if you can believe it, on 5th and Wilshire. Well, we actually met there for the first time. I had this idea when Capitol was reissuing the Louis Prima box set or CD, like a greatest hits. We were going to induct Louis in the band into this Lounge Hall of Fame and created this event. And I reached out to Senor because I'd been told that by a couple people that he had this great show. I think that was the first time we met, right, Senor?
Yep, it was at House of Pies, and I have to apologize because we made a date to meet.
Hang on. Someone needs to mute themselves. Everybody, please check your mute because there's an invisible. I'm hearing voices. Thanks.
Yeah.
And let me just also interject. Louis Prima is the artist that you're speaking of. Capitol is doing a best of compilation, right?
Yeah, let me show some people.
Yeah.
It's okay. They won't.
Someone is not muted.
So Joey called me up on the Molotov cocktail hour. I was doing the show and still doing it 33 years later. And that's how I met Otto too, through the radio show. So he called me up and he said, hey, I'm doing this event, this lounge thing. And I'm like, oh, that sounds cool. Let's meet next Tuesday at House of Pies. He lived up the street from there. And, you know, before we had calendars on our phones and before we had phones in our pockets, I forgot about the meeting. So he called me and he's like, hey man, you didn't, and I felt horrible, of course, because that's not nice. And then we met the next week. And as soon as we met, I knew that he was one of my people. And we have been friends ever since.
Wow. And that's how rock and roll was born.
Yeah.
And actually, you used to take me to the King to see Jump with Joey, but a friend of Bill Ungerman, your sax player, took me there first and said, and that's when we had that conversation. I remember too, Joey, about you sort of loaning me the band for Monday nights, which made all the difference in the world because we couldn't have done that show any other way. Not the Velveeta Underground, also because of a dispute with Kraft, we had to just give up the name, but wasn't practical. And I showed up without any
there's like what is it called, a conflict of interest, because you were so huge at that point in your career, as we all know, that we wouldn't want any like defamatory stigma happening towards Kraft, the little boutique company that it is.
I actually did get a cease and desist letter because I was on the cover of a magazine in San Francisco and they had to write it. The guy was like, I talked to the lawyer. It was just something we had to do. We know this is ridiculous.
That's great. And so this is kind of, as far as I know, one of the first vestiges of lounge music revival of new people, younger people doing it in Los Angeles, as far as I know, because we had people like Marty and Elaine playing at the Dresden, and we had old haunts where people that were older generation had been doing it for decades. And right around the same time, I think Combustible Edison was doing it out on the East Coast, right? I don't know when they formed.
They were still doing Christmas in Vegas. That sort of
that was their first band.
So I don't think Combustible Edison started. Well, the record didn't come out till what, 95?
Around 94 or 93, maybe. 94,
right.
I think.
And then like we had some really good bands, cool bands going around once the lounge thing took off. Like Love Jones was another band that was of it, right? And friends of Dean Martinez, I think they were from Texas first and migrated to LA.
Right.
But Joey C, was Frenchie or Mr. Lucky functioning in 91 in San Francisco?
Frenchie was not. I don't know about Mr. Lucky. There was sort of like at the Paradise, there were a couple neo lounge acts, like the Dinos were this great band that played starting in the mid 80s. Amazing band with Little Roger, leading it. And then there's Buddy Love doing this.
Oh yeah, Buddy Love.
And he was there at the Paradise, but it was just starting to bubble up then. But I don't.
He used to headline at Bimbo's. He got really big for, I don't know, 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, we did this song called "The Death of Buddy Love" about some guy that killed him, and there was a.
Did you live for a while in Vegas or just spend a lot of time in there? Because I remember you telling me about Cookie Jar and that whole scene in San Butera that you had like been involved with, or you knew these people before LA.
I was trying to make a documentary film, not knowing anything about documentary films, like in '88, and I go out to Vegas, and I put out this press release to sort of lure out some old acts, and it ran. Mike Weatherford from the Review Journal ran this thing, and he came out to all these interviews, and then the guy that was filming the thing was exposing all the films to the base of the camera, not really knowing what he was doing, and I was just like devastated. But I talked to in film Butera and a bunch of other acts, couldn't do anything with it. And I thought, I'm enjoying the performance thing, so I started. I was going to be a lounge singer to sort of interview them and tell the story about what was happening in Vegas, which is all these little rooms where Prima and other people, played when corporations started to take over the town. They turned the rooms into slot rooms or gaming rooms. And so there were, lounges in the 50s and 60s were these cool places where people, big show entertainment would come and hang out. But then it just, fell apart. So I thought it'd be a great way to explore kind of corporate destruction of community in America. And they'd be this interesting way into the film. But like I said, it was all for naught.
Right. And it's interesting to note too. I mean, Vegas was, hinged on entertainment as something that was alluring to people to go to. And I remember someone was trying to book Royal Crown Review into a Vegas lounge, and like a casino lounge at a big casino, and they didn't want him because they said, you're too good. You will bring people out of the casino, and we want them in the casino gambling.
That's exactly right. So you got all this music as wallpaper. But back in the day when Prima and the tumult they created, it brought people to the venue, and people didn't care. But that's exactly right. They didn't want stuff that was going to be too loud or pull people in.
Yeah, my father was there in '57 and could not get into the room where Prima was performing because it was so packed, but he had to listen from like outside.
Oh.
Yeah.
And they used to go on like at midnight and play till 5. And that's what Cookie Jar did too, who was another favorite act. So we started making connections to Vegas, and we made a couple pilgrimages, and and Mike Weatherford, who's a friend of all of ours, started making introductions. We actually had a lounge symposium at University of Nevada, Las Vegas, I think in '92, that we took a bus out for. Mike was great, man. He opened up a lot of doors.
And who is he exactly?
He was the entertainment editor for the Las Vegas Review Journal.
Oh, okay.
He had, so you go around with Mike and doors would open, especially in Cookie Jar, bowed to him. And Mike was like, he got a kick out of the scene and had people that, were his age wanting to look at it through the same lens.
Oh yeah. So interesting. And who was Cookie Jar again? Because I saw videos, I think you showed me, and he was crazy. Like his act was pretty crazy, right?
Wow. He was described as a cross between, looks like a cross between Gene Simmons and Elizabeth Taylor. But imagine a guy at that point, we saw him, he was probably around 50. And he had tights and a codpiece, but he also had this amazing voice. And he was Senor could tell you more, but he actually had a major label deal in the late 60s. He had one album out, and he doesn't even want to talk about it. And
on RCA, it's
R&B.
He's wearing this pink and white groovy like polyester ensemble. It's just him like cross-legged, and I forgot the name of the album, but he does a great version of Red Balloon. But I found a sealed copy of that record in Minneapolis in like around 2000. And he's had some 45s as well. And there is a group on Facebook called I Love Cookie Jar, and it's
Wow.
KOOKEJARR. And so there's still fans of his, and they post old pictures, and it's pretty great. But yeah, Cookie Jar's insane. And I think he still may even be performing.
Yes.
He's performed on and off over the years. He was at the Sahara for a while, at the Carnival Court, this like outside lounge. He was performing there for a while, but he's a lovely, lovely person, and really super talented. And yeah,
And knew how to work a room. And Joey, like you two, made everyone feel like they were part of the experience that night.
Did he go under the name Cookie Jar on that record you're speaking of?
Yep.
Well, that's a good name.
Yeah,
Very memorable.
he started in Jersey in the late 60s, and he did like a soul and R&B review, and he has a great voice and really magnetic presence, and yeah, then he moved to Vegas.
Oh man. So yeah, he was an influence on Joey Cheezee experience, very much so, right?
Yeah.
Wow. So let's flash forward a little bit. By the 90s, we were doing this regular show at Kelbo's, and Senor Amor was the DJ, and Patrick Tierney, who could not make it today, he was part of this. Like, he was the puppeteer for Topo Formaggio, the takeoff on the mouse puppet from the Ed Sullivan Show, right? And
Yes.
I think the Joey Cheezee theme song, who put the WAP in cooperation, who put the eunuch in communication. That was
so yeah, he was the guy that sang the Joey Cheezee intro song that was kind of like a loungy shuffle, almost like a Louis Prima type of song, a Dean Martin type of song. So yeah, that was our little, I don't even know how long that went for. It was quite a long standing, and it was part of like California culture. There were a lot of Polynesian themed restaurants that still were going strong, even if the food was like, wasn't very good. It was still 50s food very much. People were not really partaking like they had once done when like decades before, right?
Yeah, and it's funny, there was this, I think about a 2-week period where there was a takeover of Calbo's, because the Kellys were looking to sell the place. And do you remember, Senor, I was made manager, never managed a restaurant. I just remember giving out free yams to everyone. But the Kellys had some thought that the kids thought that we were getting a hold of their recipes, and it all fell apart. But we had a reconciliation, and we helped close the place in 90, gosh, it must have closed in 93 or 94, the beginning of 94, I think it was. Yeah.
And so how long did you do your stint there? Because I left after some time.
So we did the one stint that went from like October to June of that year. And then that was when we closed it, when we had this chance to do this HBO special that was god awful. And then when Mr. Kelly, I had heard that he was in the hospital with cancer, and I went and visited him. He said, "We got to get back. You get back there." You know, I said, "Oh, okay." So we went back and we did like kind of a second coming of Joey Cheezee, and we knew that it would coincide with the closing of the place, so it was pretty emotional.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then then it turned into this bikini bar, and we did like do you remember we did sort of like it was
called Fantasy Island.
Fantasy Island.
And I had this blow up doll that I dressed to make look like Joey Cheezee, that we were going to set off with a weather balloon, but then I think someone punctured it. In that place where all the spiked fish, the spiked things,
Upper fish.
never took off. But that was do you remember how sad it was? I think one of the girls introduced the thing, and we showed some videos, and
I almost forgot about that night. That
Don't you still have one of the tikis, or are those gone? You do. Okay, that's DM Senor. If anyone wants to talk about that, Chris Nichols, who's on this call, got someone to get in touch with me about a pickle. Evidently, the tiki that I have was formerly a pickle in another life in a sign on Pico Boulevard. But they were throwing away or getting rid of a lot of the tiki stuff in the back, and luckily some enlightened salvageists grabbed some of that, and you're one of them. Thank you. So you still have the
Yeah, I do. No, so I mean, whatever. The statute of limitations is over. What are they get? And by the way, there is no Fantasy Island or anything.
There's a statute of limitation on tikis.
Yeah, they just raised the place. I don't know what they're building there now, but yeah, it's there's nothing there now. But so one night, Joey and I took my 1983 Volkswagen Scirocco, and we drove out from Koreatown, where we were living, to Kelbo's in Santa Monica, and we hoisted one of the tikis up over this 6 foot. Two tikis were sitting in the back of the restaurant in this outside area, and we hoisted.
You're making it sound really illegal, but you know what's really significant?
Over the fence, and the first one was so heavy it broke, like the head snapped off. But we ended up being able to put that both in, sticking out of the Rocco with the trunk was up, and we drove down Pico like at 20 miles an hour back to Koreatown, and then we went back again and got the other tiki.
And I've years later, I would be moving it. It would take 3 people at least, or 4, to move the thing. And I'm thinking, we just tapped into that energy that a mother does when the kid's under the station wagon and hoisted it up. It was crazy.
I'm looking. Okay, there I have it. Now I'm trying to get I hid myself. And just if anyone wants to know, the tiki that I have is now in Las Vegas at a place called Frank's Tiki Bar. And before we left for Australia about 10 years ago, I took my kid, who was like 8 at the time, and I said, let's give it a home, and we dropped it off there. It's Frank's. It's downtown.
Frankie's.
Yeah, it's still there, right?
With a lot of other stuff.
Do they have it indoors or outdoors?
I have no idea. I thought
it's inside, Otto.
Yeah.
I think it's inside.
And those guys actually were excited because a couple of them, or one of them, went to UCLA, and they used to go to Kelbo's all the time. So they.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah. I didn't know that. Yeah.
Oh man, okay, thank you, Otto. I finally got the screenshot of the Cookie Jar album cover. I'm going to do a screen share real quick so everyone can see.
Yeah, the Cookie Jar album is super collectible because R&B stuff's really big, right? So that's like
pledging my love. There it is. See, there's that groovy outfit, the pink and white outfit.
Pledging my love, because it's a soul album. Wow.
Yeah, it's there's some great cuts on it. But God bless him.
Yeah. And we're
Thanks
back.
for finding that, Joey.
I'm gonna I've got a bunch of good photos here that I want to share. I'm gonna do a screen share with some photos. First, focusing on kind of in a order of Joey C. while we're in this area of the story, and then over to
Otto.
Yeah. Because, pardon me, just also to say, internet's been a little shoddy in my neighborhood. So if I get kicked off, it might take a few minutes for it to come back on, but please try and join back up here.
Okay.
And I'm going to be putting this out on YouTube. It's recording, so I will edit whatever sections together. But without further ado, there's people waiting to get in. Okay. Thank you for waiting so patiently. All right, screen share. Let's see what we got here. All right. Yep.
Wow.
Oh, that's a lot of images.
That is a lot of images.
Oh, look at this.
Mm-hmm.
Look at me. Look at how prepared I am.
Mm-hmm.
I could do a PowerPoint. Anyways, yes, Shag was part of this whole thing. Can we talk about Shag for a minute? Anyone want to give a quick shout out to Shag and
Yes.
his
Yeah.
participation in what this was?
I'll take that one.
Mhm.
Okay.
Shag is probably a lot of people on the call know Shag as a musician, and then of course a very famous artist later on. And he worked at a record label right before I met him called Dr. Dream Records. But I met him in my backyard at a tiki mug party where Beach Bum Barry was the bartender and Sven was doing a slideshow, and everybody was supposed to bring their mugs, their most valuable mug, and we would like talk about them, and we would show an educational slideshow about the tiki mug. And so our friend Dominic and Becky, who were into the 60s scene, knew
Yeah.
Shag because Shag was a mod and a 60s guy. And they brought him to my party. And then he ended up doing the cover art for a zine that I put out. He did the cover of number 2 and number 17, which was the last one. And he did the cover of Exoticon that you were showing.
Right.
in
We
last
have those
talk,
here. Yep.
which is why you invited me onto the show, because I made some comments about Exoticon and you said, you got to join us next time. So the Shag connection is very, very strong. I mean, now he's, pretty famous. He has a retail store in Palm Springs.
Yeah.
I mean, he had a Shag ballet like that was in Las Vegas for some years. I mean, he has a Shag documentary. He's been on lots of TV shows and whatever,
Right.
He's
And it's
toured
all
around the world with
because
his art
Dominic
exhibit.
Fiore brought him to your party.
Yeah.
What was
And
this
he
one
loved what we were doing. And he was like, I said, oh, you're an artist, you do some stuff, and I went over his house and I was like, oh, this is great. Okay, so let's have an art exhibit and let's, you do the cover of my zine. And he was like, yeah, sure. Okay. And
Wow.
he thought that me giving him an art show at Cacao Coffee House in West LA was kind of a big deal. And he thought it's kind of stupid because like, I'll do this paintings, but nobody will buy them, but I'll just go with it. This Otto guy wants to throw an art show for me, so I'll just do it. And that was his first ever art show.
Wow.
What
That's
was this
amazing.
for, Otto? This
Yeah. When was that, Otto?
That was early 95, like say, January, February. Well, the issue of Tiki News came out in February of 95, but I met him in my backyard in like the summer of 94.
Right. A lot of things happened right around 94, 95 in this whole thing. It really seemed to, catalyze, if you will, I'm going to show this. Can
what's
you
what's
see
the story behind that photo?
about behind this?
Oh,
Oh,
Shag is just cranking out,
Yeah.
cool images. Oh, actually, I would like to bring to light the person on the far right of this image who's carrying that huge champagne bottle.
Yes.
I think he's in the audience here tonight.
Yes.
Can you unmute?
Chris?
Oh, can I?
Yeah, you're unmuted.
Am I? Oh, I'm unmuted.
Yeah.
Do you
That's
have a
you?
comment about this, Chris?
Yeah. Pete Maruzzi is here too from the LA Conservancy Modern Committee, and now the Palm Springs Modern Committee. But Shag did that for our 20th anniversary of our group that worked to save modern architecture in LA.
Oh, that's
Wow.
And he made it as a print, and we made a bunch of money off of it, which went to our efforts to save historic places.
Is that Pete in front of or behind the camera?
No, that's supposed to be Julia Schulman, the architectural
Oh,
photographer.
Jesus. Okay.
And I believe there on the right by me is Mary Margaret Stratton,
Uh-huh.
who did her own sort of music event
Mm-hmm.
at the Masonic Lodge on Vermont there
Mhm.
many years ago.
That's great.
Wow.
I wanted to share this cool picture I found.
Yeah, what is that?
Oh, where'd you get that?
I don't
That's a
remember.
cover.
It's from a magazine.
Yeah.
Let me
Oh.
pin you right here so I could get you there. Let me see. I'm doing a screen share, so I'd have to get out of the screen share.
That was that song where Senor had a bongo solo.
Oh yeah, the famous song "Senor Amor"
Yeah.
from Jack Sugar Shack days.
Joey, are you wearing an AstroTurf vest in this picture?
I think I might be.
Yeah.
If I quit the screen share, I'm gonna pin you to this and like hold that up again if you can, please, Chris. Let's
Chris, do
see.
you remember when I had that old Rambler and I had painted blue AstroTurf all over the thing?
Spotlight.
Let's go back to Kelbo's for a moment.
Okay.
Got some great memorabilia here from Joe Seehee. Here's this special show menu, the Cocoa Bowl. We have, like in our past episode, we spoke about, you know, Korla Pandit and Eddie Vegas, and there he is right here. And can you give us a little backstory about Eddie Vegas?
Wow, boy, the short story is that Eddie is someone I met at the Dresden room. I think Pat Tierney had hit me the fact that he was hanging out there.
Mm-hmm.
And Eddie, his name was Eddie Venegas, but he gave himself the moniker. He said Marty made him sound more classy. And Eddie just started to come out to the shows and would do a song. The band never had any idea what song it would be, even if after it started. You know that, Joe. They used to have a poll on how many beats he was going to drop per song.
Oh, right. Yeah. It was very abstract, modern renditions of lounge music. Yes.
Hooker like, yes.
Yeah.
But that was a menu that Pat made to move a little food.
Yeah, Pat made some great artwork for this stuff. I mean, here's another one, the Cacophony Society, the special roller rink performance with Korla Pandit. I mean, wow.
The Cramps came out from that. There's a great picture with them and Korla. Gosh,
no.
Oh yeah.
We just did a move, or I would have found it. We'll do another episode. Yeah, that was the old munitions plant now, Moonlight Rollerway, and Korla was playing the big organ.
And you know you've made it when the Cramps come to see your band.
Right.
So they were definitely there for Korla.
Yeah.
Here's another flyer for when you played Bimbo's 365.
Yeah, Eddie played that, forgot that too. Yeah, that was and Otto, I didn't know you met the love of your life there. Makes me feel better about the show, because we were worried 20 minutes before Korla was supposed to go on, he didn't want to perform. Do you remember that, Senor? And we're trying to convince him that no, there's 500 people or whatever waiting.
Well, yeah, no, first of all, he almost didn't show up. We had to beg him to show up, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, didn't you go on like an hour late or something?
Oh my God. That was the last time I realized we couldn't count on him. Really, the stakes were getting a little high.
Well, hey,
but
Skip Heller in your band, Joey?
He was
Skip
in
Heller in the
that,
band?
yep, he was in that gig. Yep.
Yeah.
yep. And also, Skip Heller was like the hinge pin of how we ended up doing the tribute to Les Baxter. I'll get to that in a minute. But for anyone who's going to be, everyone here probably knows who Korla Pandit is or was. But for future viewers on YouTube, can one of you give us like a quick elevator pitch backstory on some context of who Korla Pandit was? 5 sentences or less. Ready? Go.
Joey, Senor, you want to take it?
There's
There's a documentary out about him now.
Joey, you talk about it, because you really helped kind of give him a renaissance because of all these shows, and he hadn't performed in years.
Right. I'll just start. He was around in 1949 at the beginning of television, KTLA Channel 5, right? Performing live on television, and he got replaced after some time by Liberace, who was in his very beginning of his career. And we cover this in the first episode, and we even show some footage of him. But this is a man who was friends with everybody in Hollywood back then, and the new people probably like James Dean. He knew like Marilyn Monroe. He sat with me at Exoticon and told me stories of Marilyn Monroe. His legacy was shrouded in mystery. He was a very wise person in how he dealt with you know, racism in the 50s, very smart person, and how he just dealt with it. And Joe C., he kind of rediscovered him in a way, brought him out of the mothballs, if you will. And, you know,
Well, yeah, the real mothballs were, I think, Stuart Sweezy and Pat Tierney a couple of years before they did a show, but then he wasn't really performing or doing anything. So we let him come on, and he would just, you know, mesmerize the audience. But the real interesting thing that R.J. Smith discovered in that Los Angeles Magazine piece was that he had been sort of impersonating or putting himself off as an Indian mystic. He was actually an African-American guy who never would have gotten on television in the late 40s. He was also married to a white woman, which I don't even know if that was legal in California.
Yeah.
But he was a fascinating character, enormously complex and lovely. And it was really an amazing thing.
yeah. I mean, yeah, that was a great era back then. I mean, there you are. You made a record together.
He was playing synth, very funky synth on that thing.
This is a collector's item. Millions sold in Europe, not available in stores. Did Pat Tierney do the artwork, I'm guessing?
Yeah, and this was rendered in like 94. That thing took about, every thing would take, moving the globe, you know, that far would be 40 minutes. It was just like weeks in the making, but it was all from shots of cowboys and things. It was a great cover.
You know, I was thinking about this, and that someday we'll be laughing at how often we would get kicked off of Zoom and how low tech it was. And we thought it was such a big deal, like Photoshop or Pro Tools.
Yeah.
Joey, what was it that got Korla onto Mars Attacks into the movie?
Oh,
you mean
yeah.
Ed Wood. So
Yeah,
Korla and I, I got
Wood.
invited to bring him to the Valley for a birthday party. He was playing, and it just so happened the I can't remember the guys, the co-writers of Ed Wood were there, and they talked to him about him doing a cameo for that.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's also in the other episode we discussed this, right?
Yeah.
How it was really like he had to stay overnight at your house the night before, so you would make sure that he actually got to the film set.
Fucking
We didn't wrangle him. His son came down. We wrangled him for one recording, the Sympathy for the Record. Not this one, but another, I don't know, 8-song EP. CD.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, before this, he was playing gigs occasionally at places like the San Gabriel Civic Center, which is like 2 blocks away from where I grew up. In
And some
San
pizza
Gabriel.
places too.
and the Old Town Music Hall in El Segundo.
Yep.
That's the first time I saw him was at the Old Town Music Hall in El Segundo. And yeah, he mostly did all these senior citizen gigs.
Yeah, people that knew who he was.
Mhm.
We're almost there.
Yeah.
This is your. What's
We're
the
in
story
space.
behind this? Eddie
We did
Vegas.
we actually made a movie with him, and we dubbed everything. It was amazing. Pat had to, impersonate Eddie because he had some trouble with the lines. Eddie was probably dealing with dementia when we didn't know it.
Yeah,
For the last few years.
we thought it was the alcohol.
But this was a great show, and Michelle Carr and
Rita?
not Rita, but who else was one of the dancers? We did this show, and it was just celebrating the world of space. It was really dopey, and that's what happened. That phone call with my mom, where she gets
Right
about me. That was what we did. And it was at Senor's place. We just let the tape recorder roll.
And ironically, today we landed on Mars. So what a crazy coincidence.
I planned it that way. I mean, things were really starting to pop off here in LA. I mean, look at this. The LA Reader, second only to the LA Weekly. Once they went color in their, and probably glossy in their cover. I mean, look at that. Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, you're a real operator there, Joe. I mean, you secured the cover of the Reader. I never even did that.
Well, I was hot for half a minute. I was connected to this. We were going to do a Vegas a buddy cop show with Wayne Newton that just fell apart. But yeah, for half a minute, it was There was a lot of heat on it.
And
Evaporated quickly. Did
tell
you
me,
ever,
go ahead.
go ahead.
Someone had a question. Did you ever, was that you, Senor?
No?
All right. Was it Otto? It was a voice in my head. Tell us, what's this deal with Camel Presents? This is cut off.
I can't believe you never took any of their money.
What's the story here? You are like so connected in the industry, my friend. Like,
So they were wanting to do club promotions. So they were sponsoring some, not bands, but they would give money to clubs to bring in bands. So we had this place called the Night Watch. I don't know if you guys ever remember it. It was on the top floor of that really awful building on corner of Sunset and Vine, right?
Yep,
It was,
Sunset
yes.
and Vine.
it was so badly maintained they had to just tear the whole thing down, which doesn't happen with
No,
a Scott.
they gutted it. They gutted the building and built it like from the inside out because they
I
kept.
thought are you sure? I thought so they didn't raise the building?
No. They
Wow.
just basically gutted it.
So there was a guy named, do you remember that the owner of the club who would at every show, they had the money to pay us, but he would try to get
Camel gave him the money
I
ahead
can
of
make
time,
it money.
like a big chunk of dough. A
He's
big
all
chunk of money.
blown up. So we just had to pull the plug after like 2 episodes, but it was a really cool space.
and all I
Camel-
got was this lousy flyer.
And
Yeah,
all we
because
got was
the
loud, and
guy-
we used to do a commercial about how cigarettes are they're so good, they're almost
Healthy.
addictive, but not.
Addictive.
But we had some
Almost.
fun at Camel's
In
expense.
your show, that was part of your show.
It was part of the show. We created a theme song for Camel.
Yeah, and then you took the show to Encounter.
That's
Right.
Should
That's
be.
what this is from.
Yeah. This is the structure at the LA airport, the
Mhm.
modernist structure, and you could see there the windows.
Yeah.
There's a whole nightclub up there.
Wow.
It was. Yeah.
Did they tear the thing down though?
No, now it's just storage. Now.
Oh, of course it is. It's the
Storage.
21st century. That's what those things were built for. I mean, what happened with cars, with hovercrafts, with fins and bubble tops? I mean, when we were
Oh.
kids, they told us things were going to be so cool.
Flying
I don't
cars.
know. That's a whole other discussion.
Yeah,
you
I
were-
used so I DJ'd at Encounter on Friday nights, and then Joey and I did a bunch of shows there together, and his band played, and then we brought in some other bands, like I think the Wondermints played, and Charlotte's Bionic Blimp, and we did had some New Year's Eve
Tipsy,
shows. And,
another band like from back then that was
Right.
sampling lounge albums and crafting them together so beautifully. You mentioned Wondermints, and
Yeah.
that's a band that there were a lot of different sounding bands that were kind of different genre, not exactly what you would call lounge music,
Mhm.
but it all was part of this scene that came together at the time. And Wondermints basically, like, I remember, like, I wasn't there, but I had heard Brian Wilson went and sang a song with the Wondermints at Spaceland or something incredible. And they later went on to be his band, right?
Yep. Yeah, they became his backing band for. They still may actually still even be performing with him.
Yeah.
They
I mean,
are.
I think so.
Probing. Yep, that's right. One of our players used to play with them too.
right, Probin
Okay.
Gregory, yeah. And so you had some merch going on here, Joe
It was
Cheezee. I mean, look at this, the
a
pinball machine.
concept that never quite took off. Another one of Pat Tierney's bad ideas. No, I
This
think
is-
this was
this
just
is a great idea.
snippet from he made this.
Let's look at that
Eddie
again.
It's a drunk driving board game. That was his concept because
Wait, the pinball machine or the board game?
the board game behind it. It's
Okay,
because
but
Ed
look
used
at
to always
this.
talk about. He always had these pieces of advice like you don't want to. You don't drink and drive, or if you do, you take the side streets, and you want to drink white so it doesn't. If it spills on your suit, it's not a problem. And then we sort of adapted this idea for our wedding invitation. Juliet and I got married, and Pat did that too.
These are beautifully done. I mean,
Yeah.
look
it's
at
amazing.
look at how much skill has gone into this, and I doubt this was Photoshop. I don't.
Well, it's
Pat
funny.
drew these or what? He drew all these caricatures. They look just like comic book ads from this.
Yeah, he did a lot of clip art, and he had this technique of, you know, Xeroxing and then going on top of it. But
Yeah,
that was really interesting. I was thinking of you, Otto, too, because, you know, this scene still is with us, because some of my dearest friends who are on this call here are still in my life. And I met my wife through performing, just like Otto did. So it's not just you know, it's the scene is sort of within us.
right. I remember you told me once the only reason you did it was for the chicks. And like,
I don't think I said that, did I?
No.
That sounds, no.
Here's Eddie Vegas's hangover holiday helper. Okay. We spoke about this in our last thing, but we didn't. Oh, hey, get back here. There you go. Hey, I don't know my own strength. Anyways, look at that. Patrick Tierney made that too.
Yeah, he did.
See, revert. Okay, the lush thrush, singing sensation, and comic drunk. Okay, look at this. I mean, there were basically aspirin in there, right?
Oh, I think it's just jelly beans.
Yeah, I think it's
Jelly
candy. I
beans.
think it's just
Okay.
jelly beans.
So this was not approved by the FDA, huh?
No.
Hangover holiday instructions. Go ahead, take the
It was-
pills in this pack here with a tall glass of whatever you kind of booze you're drinking. Look at this. It's
Yeah.
so wonderful. Good luck, Pally.
Mhm.
We took Eddie to Vegas to meet some radio contest winners. This is another long story I won't bore you with, but that was Eddie at the very end, and we created those things as part of the souvenir pack to give the radio.
It's so good.
Ah,
So good. Oh, okay. Well, okay. Now I really want to get into the heavy duty part of your career, the lounge bash. Can you give us?
oh, this is a story that many people don't know about, but I think it's worth hearing because some of the young people don't know what we went through. And when lounge singers, performers were treated like animals, referred to as lizards. And I had the picture. There's a great photo that Jeff Bodo did after this occurred, and I had a boa, and my wounds were really fresh, but I couldn't find it because of the move. But what happened was, Senor donated his car to Julian Nitzberg to make this film where he needed a car to bury. So we were sharing my 72 Pinto. Do you remember that, Senor, for a couple of weeks? And I happened to be out on the town, and I was with this woman she had too much to drink, and she couldn't, too much to drink, so she couldn't drive me, but not enough for me to spend the night. So I had to call Senor to pick me up, and I was on the corner of, where was that? It was
At Hillhurst, I think you were in front of the drawing room.
the drawing room.
Mm-hmm.
And I see these guys, and it looks like a Miller's Outpost ad. Little do I know, it's sort of this Armenian gang. And I was on the corner too long. As it turned out, Senor had to do some recycling.
No, actually, it was vacuuming. It was probably like 1 a.m. I never cleaned, and I got a bug up my ass, and I was vacuuming, and I just went with it, and I was vacuuming, and meanwhile he's on the corner of Hillhurst, and wherever.
These guys literally just 3 or 4 start kicking my head in, and I just remember I thought I was gonna be really badly hurt or killed. And all of a sudden there were headlights, and into the intersection, this car stops, and these guys scatter, and I walk up to it. I look I had blood streaming down. I said, I'm so lucky. And it turns out it's a guy, Albie, who used to be one of the regulars at the Cowbell show. And he recognized me, and he stops at this intersection. And I thought it was such a miracle because there were a couple other cars that had stopped, had driven by in the last minute or two, either not recognizing me, as I say, or maybe they just caught a bad show. But I was really lucky to get out of there. And then how did we connect? you met at the hospital or something.
Yeah.
'Cause this is before cell phones. I don't even remember how
They
that.
probably did recognize you, Joey, and they said like, "Oh, that's Joey Cheezee."
That could have been, like I said,
Most
it could-
likely, it sounds like a James Elroy movie or something.
Yeah. Luckily, the guy took you to Kaiser, I think, on Vermont.
luckily they didn't. They didn't do anything. But the nicest thing, Pleasant Gaiman, she made a sequin eye patch because we had a show. I think a couple of days later, we were opening up for Ema Sumac at the House of Blues, and it was hard to have any set. I was off balance, but
There was so much going on there. I mean, honestly, I've seen almost worse things happen to you in your performances. You've come close to death in some of your performances at Kelbo's, as I recall, on the rollerblades. But I mean, so much stuff was going on also in LA. Like people like Ema Sumac were coming out and doing shows again.
yeah,
It's pretty
big band.
incredible. This is like 1990, mid 90s. Like I say, here's 94. I recorded Cocktails with Joey. Here's an advertisement from that. It was released in 95. And right at the same time, Les Baxter, I think it might have been Skip Heller, had found some unreleased television footage of his with really high quality audio on it. And so he got together with Lee Joseph from Dionysus Records and put it out. And so we did this release party.
oh my God.
It was my record release party for Cocktails with Joey. And it was also the release party. It was like a double release party for the Les Baxter, The Lost Episodes. And this is another Patrick Tierney, as you can see. And there was 1,000 people in the audience at the Century Club. It was like
I mean, that's what was epic about it. I think there was more than 1,000 people. They were packed all the way out to the lobby and out in the street because it was so crowded inside, right? I don't know how much that room held, but at least 1,000 people.
And this is how I met Skip Heller. Skip Heller was friends somehow with Joe Seehey, and Joe Seehey had told me about this guy who somehow knows Les Baxter. I mean,
Right.
of course, I mean, Skip's the kind of guy who will look up people in the white pages and just cold call them and like, hi, is this Les Baxter? Is this the Les Baxter? My name's Skip Heller and ... And somehow like he ended up having a friendship with him.
Skip connected with Les's daughter, Leslie.
Okay. Yeah.
And she got him the tapes or somehow and
Right. And so
and also got you the sheet music, right?
well, what happened was, I mean, what happened there was Skip and I drove out to Palm Springs where Les Baxter was living. And it was pretty incredible because he had a gigantic, like 2 feet full of orchestra scores and parts that Capitol Records had found in one of their storage units that they were clearing out and from his albums, and they were stamped like property of Capitol Records. It was their property. He was hired to make an album and they were going to throw it out, and they got in touch with him and said, we're going to throw this out. Would you like it? And then it was for about a 40-piece orchestra. Like most of those things were quite a large 40-piece orchestra. And Skip Heller and I went out there and he said, go ahead and like borrow what you want. He sat down with us at this decrepit old grand piano that sounded really bad, the piano itself. But it was out of tune, and he sat there and he played Quiet Village for us and showed us like how he arrived upon his ideas for the harmonies in it and everything. It was it was a music lesson in itself. Like, yeah, that was like up there in the top 10 for me, like, okay, personal, like music lesson. Of course, like, no iPhones at the time, that didn't go viral, only in my head, like
how much work did you have to do on the charts when you
we took the charts to my house and we spent 2 solid weeks
Wow.
reducing the charts from 40 players down to 20, so 20 people could do it. So we were able to use some of the parts. Then we had to create other parts to go in
To
for
Brit.
other instruments that weren't in the band to fill it out. We had 4 violins, a harpist, you know, double reed oboe, bassoon players, trumpets, saxophones. Plaz Johnson, who had played on the African jazz and what was the other one? The jazz, the 2 Les Baxter albums. What's the other one? African jazz, and there's, anyways, he played on 2 of those albums. He played the gig with us. So did Francis, huh?
Didn't Red play too?
Red Young, who's on the Cocktails with Joey, but also Francisco Aguabea, who's like an iconic conguero, Cuban conguero of the 20th century, like very up there with like Mongo Santa Maria, for example, one of the biggest of the big. And, you know, he was part of the Catherine Dunham dance company. I think she brought him to the US. He played in Peggy Lee's band, like the Latin Lee album. He played with everybody, you know, and Tito Puente and the Eddie Palmieri, and, you know, he had his own band. But I mean, he showed up in a tuxedo. I didn't even ask him. That's like how he rolled to this gig. And it was like, wow, we have him. That's like, he was one of the only people living in the US who had been inducted into all the different sects of the the Santeria religion, and he was a master of all that drumming.
Wow.
And yeah, and he was probably on those Les Baxter albums because he was one of like a handful of people in the 50s that were the guys that were called to do the Exotica albums. So yeah, we had Craig Fandiga on vibes and Eddie Resto on bass and Ramon Banda on the timbales from Pancho Sanchez's band. I mean, it was a gig, but there were so many people in the audience, like the talking was almost as loud as the music. It was like, you know, it was quite a feat, and, you know, it's there, you know, right on the same heels as this, we have Exoticon. And we spoke a lot about Exoticon in our last episode, our first and last episode, actually. I found the booklet going through some of my things, and it kind of prompted me to get in touch with Senor and Josie, and to do like a little roundtable about this time period. So if you go to my YouTube channel, you'll see that whole thing. And so Otto messaged me because what I didn't realize was that although I had played there, I don't even know who got in touch with me to book the gig, but Otto was one of the people that actually put this on and produced this show. And so
Yeah, it's funny, I booked all the bands, but I don't think I contacted you.
I don't think so.
I booked, you know, Combustible Edison, Joey Cheezee,
Bye.
Wait, can you mute that person?
Please mute. Someone mute.
You can mute them. Joey. You can
I know,
go-
but hey, everyone who's listening,
Joey, you can just go mute on them. Go to them.
I've got to hunt them down. The problem. And
I'll give one bag. Doesn't matter. This bag, I have to have another.
Marlo Harris.
Marlo Harris. Yeah, sorry everybody for my technical challenge here.
I had a question for you.
So you did it? Can you do it, Otto?
No, only you can.
I can't find the entire group of people. Marlo Harris, mute. There we go. Thank you. Got it. Anyways, look at this lineup of people.
Yeah, Erwin Chused was there, and he's friends with Matt Groening from The Simpsons and Mark Mothersbaugh from Devo.
Yeah.
So they were there, and they, you know, of course, they were there to see Korla Pandit and everybody else. They're friends with Combustible Edison also. Yeah, I mean, it was epic. It was one of Combustible Edison's largest shows ever in the US.
Really? Wow.
So did you guys think about, I know before Tiki Oasis happened, was it not robust enough to do another Exoticon? I mean, or did...
A lot of things happened. We had financial backers and they claimed that they lost money, even though it was sold out and it was oversold. So they claimed, oh, we can do it again, but we're going to have to divvy up the money in a different way because we didn't make very much money. There was that. You know, we had a lot of problems. You know, we probably broke some fire code violations there for sure. The bar that we got, you know, they ran out of booze by like 11 o'clock, you know. And then this happened in October of 95. And then I met Baby Doe, and then I moved to San Francisco in September of 96. So I met Baby Doe at your gig in January of 96 that you showed the Korla Pandit flyer. And so then during that time, I was traveling a lot to San Francisco. So I wasn't really available to work 100% on this gig. But this gig was conceived by Steven Strike, who worked at Record Surplus. Then they brought me in to kind of make it happen, you know, and put it all together. And as a team, we made the whole thing happen, but it was a lot of work. We worked on it for over 6 months, you know, putting it all together.
Great show.
It was a great show. And, you know, there was 2 rooms.
People had to come up the stairs of the Park Plaza Hotel, which is in the opening scene of Wild at Heart, where Nicolas Cage smashes that guy's head on the marble steps.
And it overlooks MacArthur Park, the MacArthur Park, where the person left the cake out in the rain.
But it was MacArthur Park, at least at that time, was like Skid Row. So people would try to go to the liquor store across the park, and then they were turning back halfway going, it's too scary out there.
Oh yeah, I know that. My girlfriend back in that period of time lived in the Asbury across the street.
Oh yeah, it's
Here's a great shot. Look at that. Wow. Who's that guy?
What is that?
Look at that guy.
I don't know why you have that there, but hello, everybody.
I wanted to give Senor a little juice because I thought I had this slideshow going on and I didn't really have any photos of you.
Oh.
I wanted to like cover the actual convergence of Otto's participation in the scene. You and I and Cheezee were in kind of the beginning, early part of the 90s, and then Otto also came along, but I don't know.
Yeah, you guys were my heroes, you know, like going to the Joey Cheezee show at Kelbo's was like a big deal for me, you know. That was
so here's another one. Oh, the Liquid Kitty, you know. And you know, Senor, you had your Molotov cocktail was hours going on actually what, 31, 32 years now
30,
or what?
30. It may even be this September, it may even be 34.
wow.
But it's around 33 and a third right now, correct?
Right.
All right.
Uh-huh.
Hey.
What
Those are called dad jokes, by the way. I just
yeah.
wanted to let you know.
That is a dad joke. And then that's Otto on the Molotov cocktail hour.
Yep. And
But
then
that's not the first time I was on. That was a later time.
Mhm.
right. And then here's
These are the Exoticon trio, the Knight of Exoticons. So this is what we looked like when we were throwing that gig in front of, you know, 2,500 people or however many people were there. I don't know.
Yeah, it looks like there were 2 different photographers and 2 of you were looking at one of them and the guy on the right was looking at whoever was taking that one, right?
Yeah, that's true, actually. It was like a photo op, you know.
And here's you and Cheezee before you met your significant others.
Yeah.
Well, you get it where you can. I mean,
It's all good.
I think we learned that lesson.
Right, no, of course. This was before pronouns.
Where did you find that photo? Where did that come from? That's
Love
great.
the one you're with, baby.
Right.
You know.
That's the same guy that took the previous photo, my buddy Hines that I used to hang out with. He used to come to lounge things with me. You know, he'd call me up and go, okay, is there any lounge thing happening tonight? And I'm like, yeah, we're going to this party that Joey and Senor told me about. And we showed up there and that's what happened.
What's this sign? Is this, oh, this is a backyard party. And this
Somebody
is
was just having a lounge style party, you know, so they had a
Right.
cappuccino bag in there, you know, and they had like a martini bar, but it got drank dry so fast that I don't think there was anything there by the time I got there.
Oh, man. And then there was like UHF magazine. People all around LA were covering this. It was a short-lived magazine, fashion magazine, but they did this whole layout on lounge. Like, here's the Blue Hawaiians, as they played every Sunday at the Lava Lounge, which was like an institution. I think it ran 20 years or something. I don't even know. It ran a long time, right?
It was an institution. I mean, it was an early adopter of the lounge scene, you know, kind of like a precursor even, you know, and
Yeah.
the go-to place in Hollywood. It was, I mean, if there was something else going on, like a Joey C show in Hollywood, we go to the Lava Lounge first, you know, and then go to the show.
Yep. And then who are the gentlemen on the right here?
I don't know them. They might have been shot at a different photo shoot time than I.
Yeah, that's at the Lava Lounge, but yeah, I don't know who those guys
Those are professional models.
Mhm.
And then here's yours truly. This was shot at the Derby. My backup singers at the time.
Okay, they're unnamed.
And my fuchsia hush puppies.
Hey.
And that was shot at the Dresden.
Yep.
Along with a
Sure
couple other
was.
people.
And who are the gentlemen to these are the other two guys that did
From
the
Exoticon,
Exoticon with you,
right?
right?
Yeah, the previous shot that you saw, the three of us, that's us. Here's us in our, you know, day clothes.
Right, of course. And, you know, on our last episode, we were speaking about, you know, what happened to the lounge scene in LA as far as a revivalist thing. And, you know, it was always kind of scattered. There were a lot of different kinds of bands, like a surf band, for example. The Bomboras were part of it. The Blue Hawaiians. There were different sounding bands that all kind of fit the bill for the lounge scene, but it kind of morphed also more so in the lounge. Like by the end of the 90s, it kept itself going through tiki culture, is what I think, right?
It kind of split. There was the swing scene that like took away all the momentum, all the press, all the money, you know, all the liquor ads and everything all went to the swing scene. But then the tiki thing took off, you know, kind of underground and kind of organically with the fans, you know, and Exoticon was big. Martin Denny records started getting reissued. Arthur Lyman got reissued. You know.
Yep. And then the Capitol Records Ultra Lounge series, and on the heels of that, like Royal Crown Review, the movie Swingers, and Royal Crown Review passed on doing the movie Swingers, not knowing it was going to be what it was or what it turned into.
And then Big Bad Voodoo Daddy were in there, and they are still going to this day playing, you know, super high level, like, you know, kind of high money gigs for, you know, whatever corporate parties or you know, high end weddings, you know.
Corporate parties, also the county fair circuit. They'll always be able to. They'll work till the left.
So Otto, you did the Tiki News, but then also Sam Wick and his brother and Bradley did
Lounge magazine.
Yeah,
which was huge. I think Sam is on the call. Maybe he can tell you like what their distribution was at the end. You know, Tiki News only got up to like 1,000 subscribers. You know, we printed 2,000 or 3,000 issues, but we had 1,000 subscribers. But Lounge magazine, I think, you know, had a much bigger distribution around Los Angeles, at least.
Oh, definitely. Here's you and Doe.
I'm trying to remember. Maybe David remembers it. It might have been 10,000 or 30,000, or it was a pretty big run.
Wow. And that was for sale, right? It wasn't a free magazine.
No, it was both.
Okay.
We would give it away, and then we would sell it as well.
And how widely distributed was the magazine?
I think the mail order was wherever people were, so that would be international. But the magazine was largely given away in the LA area. And I think, Otto, we probably sent you copies, right? Because before you started Tiki News, right?
Yeah, you would send me a bundle in San Francisco. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think one of the things we realized is like the internet was just starting, and we started connecting with these like-minded people in different cities and different countries. So we'd bulk ship to people, you know, to build the community.
Yeah, to just get the distribution out there. Yeah, so it was cool because like when I would throw a gig, like me and Baby Doe, we did like a kind of a subsequent Exoticon called Bongos by the Bay with Preston Epps and with Ape, who later became a big Exotica band, and maybe like 1,500 people were there, and I had a pile of lounge magazines for all those people, so all these new people that were getting into this new lounge thing in 1996, they got free
Right.
lounge magazines at that time.
Crazy Al's on the call here, speaking of ape.
Yeah.
And then let's move into a little more of your story here, Otto. I mean, you had Tiki Mug Party. You had mentioned this. Is this the same one you were talking about earlier?
No, I had a first Tiki Mug Party in my backyard in hopes of like, doing a Tiki Mug book. But the more I learned about Tiki Mugs was that I was only looking at the tip of the iceberg. And the more I learned, the more I knew there was, 1,000 times more than what I knew. Every time I learned one thing, I knew there was 10 more things I didn't know. So this was the second mug party that happened at Madame Wu's Garden in Santa Monica.
Wow.
And Beach Bum Berry had been hanging out there for years because they had an old Don the Beachcomber bartender there named Tony Ramos. And you could just walk into their lounge and get Don the Beachcomber drinks, like authentic 40s style drinks right there, like in the 90s. The dude would melt the honey on a little burner, throw the stuff in a flash blender, and out would come this drink that was better than like a Trader Vic's drink that you could get, at Trader Vic's in Beverly Hills. It was on par with Tiki Tea, or maybe even better. It was authentic Don the Beachcomber recipes made the right way. So we would hang out at Madame Lou's all the time. And so we had this mug party there.
Wow.
It was also a great looking place. Like it was super cool. The interior of it was, like Chinese Exotica. Like it was
black leather
movie
furniture and red leather booths and some, red lanterns in the hallways, very modern.
Mhm.
Wow.
It would be very popular today if it hadn't been bulldozed.
Of course.
Right.
What about this? Tell us about this one.
Through Tiki News and the publicity that we got, and through throwing tons and tons of shows in San Francisco, doing weekly DJ gigs, monthly Exotica shows, my name got out there, and the Kahiki. Well, first of all, I'm sorry. This was the closing party for the Kahiki, a legendary Tiki bar, like huge, legendary in the world, legendary in America, one of like the top 3 that ever existed in America. The Mai Kai still exists in Fort Lauderdale. The Kahiki was in Columbus, Ohio. And they were closing, and the owner asked me to come and throw the closing party. So I got Don, he said, you hire a band, I'll pay for it, whoever it is. I said, okay, Don Tiki from Honolulu. And I had nothing to do with paying them. I don't know how much they made, but they just charged him whatever, and he just paid it. But the reason I got this was because about a year before, we had Combustible Edison play there.
Oh,
Because
wow.
I became friends with Combustible Edison just from being a fan, and then from throwing Exoticon, then they knew me. And so I said to them, where would you like to play? Like, what's like one of the best places you could play? And the 2 places they wanted to play in America was Bimbo's that they had played. They said Bimbo's is the coolest place we've ever played. And then the Kahiki is a place we would want to play. So me and this a couple of guys from Cleveland threw this gig for them at the Kahiki. And then the following year, the Kahiki closed. And so the owner called me to throw the closing party.
Wow.
Wow.
So,
Great story.
Very important fact, trivia here. The first gig when Combustible Edison played, I proposed to Baby Doe in the lobby at where the big head is with the gurgling water and stuff. So my thought was, I'm going to propose to her at the Kahiki so that on our anniversary every year, we can come back here every year. So I'll at least get to go to the Kahiki once a year for the rest of my life. And then the next year, it got sold and turned into a Walgreens.
You should have never proposed to her. I'm sorry.
I know, yeah. You must have, right?
Sorry, leave it to Joey.
Mhm.
King of the one-liners, king of the dad jokes. They replaced the B, they turned it around and made it into a D. It's called a dad joke now. Tell us about this, Otto.
Well, this is the zine. So I started Tiki News in January of '95, and it ran until 2001, I think. And during that time, I put out 17 issues. This is issue number 3, and this is Kyra from LA that a lot of you guys might know. What was the name of his band, Senor? He had a band that was famous for a minute.
Sugar Plastic.
Sugar
yeah.
Plastic, thank you. Yeah, they were on Interscope Records, you know.
Right.
And Kyra's an artist, and he's still a musician, pumping out music and pumping out art. And he's a huge, huge tiki collector. He has like incredible tiki stuff. You know, he would like scour stuff. Like he would drive around and find places, and then like, you know, figure out how to get the stuff. You know.
Wow.
So this is his artwork on the cover of issue number 3. Yeah, and then this, oh, you showed a picture of me and Bobby from Cacao previously,
Right.
but we didn't really talk about it. Yeah, so that's Bobby Green from Cacao, and that's us. I think we're at Cacao, but I'm not sure. Oh, no, I think we might be at the mug party. Actually, I don't know where that picture was even taken. Maybe at Cacao. But we had art shows at Cacao early on because just because I didn't know where else to have them. It was the only place that would have us, you know. I mean, we were so small and like nobody wanted to do a tiki thing. But Bobby was totally into it, and Cacao was like this hip, like 50s style coffee shop that him and his buddy Al just designed on their own, you know, and did the artwork for, did the logo for. So, you know, so it was really cool and really organic, you know, like self-made, you know. I liked his DIY aesthetic.
Wow. That's where I met old Otto von Stroheim.
That's true, at one of the art opens.
That was like, I don't know which magazine or Tiki News you were releasing, but we had a mutual friend that invited me to the release party, and then I brought my tiki necklaces and my incense holder to the gig, and you're like, whoa. What's this?
That's how it works. You just like you carry your artwork with you, and you're like, hey, look, I got some art.
Yeah,
So,
that was
fun. What did you see when you walked in the door to this Cacao?
Well, I think I also knew. Well, Bobby was like, oh, we got to put this stuff in our gift little display thing because he had a little merch thing. So, I think I came away from that gig knowing the Tiki trader who ran off with some of my goods. That was but it was funny because I, you know, heard of Tiki News for a couple of months. We didn't know anything about it. My friends were these guys, the swinging tikis that were all collecting tikis. I didn't pre-auto, but strangely enough, I actually knew Joey from the King because when I was going to Art Center on Tuesday nights, I would go whittle. I was doing wood sculpture, whittling 3D illustrations at Art Center. And I would go to the King on a Tuesday night, on Afro-Cuban night, and work by candlelight, whittling in the corner. And then Joey would come up and he's like, what the hell are you doing? And I'm like, oh, these are cool, you know? And then, the King was my introduction to retro. I didn't know what retro was, but then it was weird, just synergy or whatever. I hear of this Tiki News release party. I'm like, oh my God, I've been trying to find that person. And then I went. So back to Cacao and Otto.
Yeah, and you know, Al, I distinctly remember some of your carvings, like a pair of bongos with arms coming out of it, playing it itself.
Yeah,
really
I couldn't afford, it was literally, I couldn't believe it. It was like on a Tuesday night, it was $15 to get in and see the Afro-Cuban jam.
It was $5.
It was more money than I had.
They were charging you $15.
Yeah.
Everyone else was $5.
But it was more money than I had, so I ended up working a deal with the owner, and I did a piece of artwork for the inside of the place, and I got free admission after that, and then
it was beautiful, like a window box with the different drums with the hands and things.
It had light up miniature tiki torches.
Yes.
With like, I took little railroad train little lights and rigged it all up and made little lighting tiki torches and all kinds of stuff.
Wow. amazing history. Of course, the Tiki News. I'm
So
gonna.
that yellow flyer that you just showed was made by Sven Kirsten, who's not a graphic designer. So you can see the difference between that and like a Patrick Tierney flyer. But again, it's this handmade DIY kind of thing, you know, where
Yeah,
photocopy and cut and paste your stuff in there, you know.
that's how we used to do it. That's how I came up with the name for the band Jump with Joey, because we still use letter set back then. It was a sheet of letters that you rub off of a piece of plastic sheet, right, to spell, to make your flyers. There was no
Yeah.
Photoshop, there was nothing. And I ran out of letter set to make a Jump with Joey flyer, and I had not named the band yet. And I had this album by a guy named Joe E. Lewis and his Calypsonians, and the name of the album is called Jump with Joey. And on the back, it's got different things like, if you want blah, 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 come jump with Joey. If you're da, 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 jump with Joey. And so like I had all this context to put on a flyer. So I named the band Jump with Joey, Xerox the front part, and just cut and paste that. And that's how rock and roll was born, you know?
So great.
Hey, that's a good segue into how I got my name.
Oh, yeah. You're not the illegitimate child of Eric von Stroheim? As I
No,
always-
and I don't even know if Senor Amor knows how I got my name. Do you know how I got my name, Senor Amor? Do you want to tell your version of the story?
My version of the story is, so Otto was a fan of the Molotov Cocktail Hour, and he donated $100 to be a guest host. So he brought in records and he came in to be the guest host, and he made a sign with his name on it, and it was Orson von Stroheim. And I looked at him and I kept on calling him Otto. And he would correct me and say, no, it's Orson, but I guess it's stuck.
So he would do that, and then when we put the record on, I'd go, hey, it's supposed to be Orson. And then we'd get back on the air and he'd call me Otto again, you know? And so I had to just go with it.
Preminger, Wells, you know,
Mm.
whatever. It's all the same.
Yeah, nobody cares.
These are great. These covers.
Oh yeah, the graphics are really nice.
Beautifully done.
Yeah, so then when I moved to San Francisco and, you know, got some more subscribers, I could afford to put a color cover on. So this one is House Industries, who are like super famous graphic designers and super famous in the design world now. I mean, they basically just tour around the world giving speeches about their own design.
Wow.
Who's they just did one in San Francisco with the guy from Star Wars, the guy that did the new Star Wars movie was
Oh,
interviewing them. Like,
Wow. They also created house music, right? They were the creators of house music.
yeah, right. I don't know why they called it.
Who
House,
made this
House
one?
Industries, house music, same
You
thing.
know, yeah. I mean, look at this. Who made this one?
That's just done by like a graphic designer and painter in San Francisco named Davey Wong or Dave Wong.
Mhm.
And you know, he did this cover for me, and then he had kind of a little bit of a career as a painter.
Mm.
And he was painting gorillas and stuff, and then he stopped doing gorillas, and his career kind of tanked.
It's hard to paint a gorilla because they won't ever stand still.
I know.
Very dangerous.
And they're hard to sell, you know.
Yeah. And then this is a shag.
And that's the last issue, issue number 17, and the price went up. See, the original price was like $2. Now it's $3.95.
Oh wow, oy vey.
Yeah, it's a lot more. And of course, Shag was starting to become kind of famous at this time. You know, he was having some successful art shows at La Luz Gallery, you know,
Mhm.
and those would sell out, and people like Whoopi Goldberg were buying his paintings and stuff. So, you know, this was like a real favor for him to do this for me. Of course, he did it
Yeah.
for free. I couldn't afford to pay him to do a cover. I paid him like $100 or something, you know.
Gave him his start in the biz, babe. Wow.
Yeah, right. I gave you your first art show. You owe me.
Wow, it's such a great time. And this all kind of went and transpired into Tiki Oasis, parlayed itself, right? I mean, when was
It really did. Yeah, at the time that the magazine was becoming just way too much for me to manage and also have a full-time job. And I had a child, so I had to maintain my full-time job and not, not work like a musician and work freelance. What I would do is I worked freelance. And so when I had to put out an issue of the magazine, I would just tell my job, like, hey, I can't come in next week. I'll see you like in a couple of weeks. And then I'd spend 1 week, like kind of getting it all ready for the printer, and then I had to kind of stop doing that. I had to like have a real job, start making sure I had a secure income. And so that happened. And then Tiki Oasis happened. Like, we did the Tiki Oasis thing in 2000 and the magazine ended in 2001. So it was, in my personal history, it was a nice segue.
And then this year would have been the 20th anniversary of Tiki Oasis, right?
Well, 2020 last year would have been
2020.
Yeah.
I'm still in 2020.
I know. I don't know what year it is. So
that's fine. But I mean, that's quite extensive, and that bravo. I mean, we're still going strong. People discussed this. We discussed this in the last episode of like, and people have asked me before, like, well, what happened to the lounge scene? And like, well, this is what happened. It never really ever went away. It just found itself into something that is kind of like critical mass in a certain way, of like a lot of people were interested in tiki culture, collecting it for years, going back to what we were talking about in the last episode, thrift shopping, which were a lot of things happened because punk rock was about thrift shopping, one of the elements of it, and finding these items or finding kitschy records or all this stuff, and so here we are, and people are probably still making bands doing it somewhere.
Well, and now mid-century modern is bigger than anything ever, right? I mean,
yep.
So a lot of the mid-century modern followers, all the lounge people are into mid-century modern now, but so are a million other people, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's a hashtag, babe. Yeah, it's a hashtag. Madman's era tricycle for sale on Craigslist. Who's talking to me?
You can mute that person.
Oh yeah, it's that old game again. Yeah, like you look on like things for sale on Craigslist, for example, rockabilly bicycle for sale, Madman era, iPhone for sale, whatever the thing is. Like they define a whole style by like one word. Like everyone knows what Madman is. Speaking of Madman, I want to plug my latest release for a moment.
Yeah, that's sweet.
Because thank you everyone here who has made the purchase. This is Booze, Babes, and Bongos. Please mute yourself. Anyway, it's 18 songs. They were songs that I had used only for film and television licensing for a long time. And, I put this out a few years ago and with no publicity or anything. And, it didn't really sell, but I decided to actually repackage this, put it out again as a fundraiser. And what it does is $5 from each sale goes to a cause called Filling Empty Bellies. And they go to the park 6 days a week and feed people lunch, and not just homeless people, but also people that families that have run out of their food stamps at the end of the month during rent week. I mean, they're phenomenal. They've been going for 8 years. They've actually provided over 50,000 meals for people. And so I decided, okay, I could actually help the human condition a little bit by just relaunching something I have. And so anyone who doesn't have this, I'll put the link in the description for anyone who wants it.
Yeah. I was just about to ask, how can we buy the record, Joey?
I'll put the link in the description in our chat, but I'll also put the link in the description of this YouTube video when this is loaded up. All right.
Okay, cool.
Because it's a good cause. It's something very dear to me. And like, there's 18 songs. Like some of this is like got Plas Johnson on it. There's some real.
I have a question. Now after listening to you and your Les Baxter story and everything, did you take any of those things off the shelf and just run with them? Because that is an amazing album.
Who is that talking?
That's
That's
Al.
Crazy Al.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Did I run with them? Like, did I record them?
No, I'm just saying. He said use what you want, you know. And he had that huge library of stuff, and he's like, "Oh, look through and use what you want." Your album is so incredible. I mean, listening to it, it's just amazing. And it's like it's like, where did this music come from? I mean, obviously it came from your head, but it's every song is like amazingly just complex and wild, and I'm like, oh, wonder if you got some hints from the old Les Baxter archive.
No, it was just Ace. Thank you. That you couldn't pay me a nicer compliment, but I mean, it all came out of my weird brain here, and a lot of times, like the 18 songs. There's surf, exotica, twista nova, Latin beat stuff, bossa type of stuff, samba. It just one song was built at a time over a period of years. And sometimes there were songs that I was assigned to do for a film that was licensing the use of the song from me. So I just had these and I would license them into other films or TV. And so finally for public consumption, so there it is.
Amazing stuff.
Thank you. How about, does anybody out there we should do a little Q&A. Does anyone have a question? Hand raised kind of thing?
Put it in the chat if you have a question.
Oh. Otto wants to be
Or you
co-host.
can raise your hand. I don't know.
No, you can raise your hand. There's a thing called raise your hand in this,
Oh,
actually.
yeah. So you go down to reactions at the bottom. If you're on a computer, reactions, you click on that and you can raise your hand. And Chris Nichols has his hand raised.
All right.
John Alloway has his hand raised. And Michael Toth has his hand raised.
Okay. Well, how do I make someone large enough to be seen on the bigger square? This is like Hollywood Squares. We want to
Totally Hollywood Squares.
You can just click in the upper right and pin them.
They just need to talk.
add pin. There you go, Chris. Let's start with Chris.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I this has been a lot of fun, and thank you all so much for inviting me and for putting this together. I've just got to say on a personal note, back in 1992, I guess, Joey, at Calbo's, when I first went to your show, changed my life. Honestly, you pulled me up and got me to do gag things, and you just you were so inspiring with your sermons about community and love, and it really meant the world to me. And Joey married us, and he's just our wonderful friend. So thank you, Joey, for putting this together and being there all those years ago.
Wow,
I'm ready for
incredible.
Let me
So many seasons and so many reasons.
Yes.
Chris, and do you remember Chris and Shar took me to my first rave too? He drove around that desert all night, kept going, never got there, but we had a lot of fun. And Chris turned me, I was thinking today, or the other day, about how derivative all of our stuff is to some degree. That question from Al is making me think of it too. And all the stuff that Chris and Charlene brought into the scene, and appreciation for everything from road sign architecture and Googie architecture and things that just informed a lot of art. There was such great blending and inspiring, which is what happens when people, not that this is Paris or Berlin of the earliest 20th century, but there was so much happening because we were sort of feeding each other, that and it bubbled up in different ways. You can really see that looking back on it now.
And Chris turned us on to so many great places,
wow.
like the trails,
The bus tours.
Yeah. And so thanks to him, we would put a bus together, rent a bus and get a bunch of our friends, and we'd go to all these great places all over Southern California.
and
And
cause trouble.
the- yeah, it was really very special that we got
Yeah,
to see
it was,
those places.
and it was such a play. I think about it too, because I'm kind of by myself in Australia and really disconnected. And it was such a vehicle to like meet so many wonderful people. I've never experienced anything like it in my life. You know, I wish I had something like that again. And this brings it to life, and it reminds me of, you know, the connection we still have. Thanks for bringing that up, Chris.
How about Alloway?
Hey,
Thank you, Chris.
can you hear me? Am I
Yeah.
hot?
Yeah.
I'm hot. Okay. Hey, thanks everybody. This is really groovy. I'm enjoying this immensely. Yeah, it's bringing back a lot of fond places in my heart and my memories, etc. But I have a question for Joey Altruda, and that was it involves Pat Tierney. I've got so many great Pat Tierney stories too.
Don't we all? That's a whole other episode, baby.
But weren't you the band leader of JFK's favorite orchestra that was like the long lost? Weren't you really the guy that was behind that musically?
Rumors have it, yes. That, like I say, that's a whole other episode.
David.
That was, but you know, there was a whole, there was a whole story there about a long forgotten famous Cuban musician.
Epic. Yes.
Right, epic. And you know, which, like, we talk about life imitating art, right? Or art imitating life. We had created this fictitious character, and we did this whole performance art piece around it, and used some of my music, and even did like gigs with an actor who had been in the movie Scarface, who was a professional mambo piano player from the 50s, portraying this forgotten Cuban man and everything else. And basically I had then, this is 1995, flash forward to 1999, I found a Cuban singer who was very famous in his day, in real life. He had been living in Mexico City since the 50s, and he hadn't made a record in 20 years. And I found him with the actor Matt Dillon, okay, who's also a very big collector of Cuban records. We went and made a record with them. His name is El Gran Feove. And
What's the record?
The record has not come out. The record never came out, just like the fictitious Cuban character. The record,
radio stations are afraid to play it. They don't want to get punked.
Right. They don't want to get burned. But anyways, 20 years later, I mean, the thing got backburnered because there was a documentary that never got finished until this last year. And it finally premiered at the San Sebastian Film Festival in Spain and in Mexico City. And it's supposed to come out this coming year as a film and a record release. So yeah, I mean, stranger things have happened. And so yeah, I'm sure there will be certain DJs out there that will have a little bit of apprehension about playing this record, thinking maybe it's not real. Maybe it's not real. But I really have to hand it to Pat Tierney and Joe Seehey, because they were the mastermind behind this. But Joe Q Public thought it was all me for some reason. And people like Brendan Mullen, who I had seen in years, would spot me on the street, and before they'd even say hello, they would be like, I love that thing you did to the radio DJ and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, it's pretty great.
We won't mention names here. It's a family show. But let's move on. Thanks so much, honestly. Michael, because we got to go. We're almost at 2-hour mark. Michael wants to say something. Thank you, Alloway. Is it John Alloway?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
That's
Yes,
what
sir.
I thought, but you just go by Alloway, like the band, that 70s band. Love it. Thanks for joining.
Thanks
Love
for
it.
having.
Yeah, absolutely. Michael, you got,
Hey, greetings from Ohio.
wow.
Nice.
So
are you?
sorry I'm late. Who knows what I missed, but I'm glad you're still kind of got this thing going on. But when I joined in on the meeting, you were talking about some different things that you were doing with like TV and licensing stuff, and something that I have like wondered for 20 years. And if I understand, so Senor Amor, were you also involved in like licensing and kind of like advising for ad agencies for TV commercials and stuff?
So I produce music for film and TV commercials, original music, but I was a music supervisor on a couple independent movies like The Woman Chaser. And so that's where I and The Woman Chaser has like a Exotica, Latin jazz, jazz soundtrack.
Because in the late 90s, there was this wave of TV commercials using space age pop stuff.
Yeah.
And like there was one, I don't even remember what they were advertising. All I remember was they were using the Three Sons Movin' and Groovin', which was like a really obscure thing. And I'm like, how did this happen? Like, who was responsible for that? And I sort of assumed it was somebody on this Zoom meeting that was responsible for that. So I was just kind of curious, like, was anybody kind of feeding these ad agencies back in the day? Like, how did that even happen?
It happened because of the lounge scene and because of those Capitol Records reissues and all kinds of things. It became, all the music supervisors had this music ad agencies. And I think I may have told this story in the last episode, but a couple of the people on the Cocktails with Joey album, Chris Tedesco, the trumpeter, and the sax player, Doug Webb, they told me stories of being brought in, because these are like professional studio guys, top call guys. They'd be brought in to record a jingle, and the guy directing the whole thing would say like, I want you to do something on the vibe of like this trumpeter. Think you could do that? And like, yeah, because that's me. Why didn't you just get Joey Altruda to write this music? And same with the saxophone. You think you could do this, something like this sax player here? Like they play something from Cocktails with Joey, and you'd be like, yeah, I think I could do that because that's me. But you see, like the ad agency hired a producer. They didn't come to someone like me. They hired a production house.
Yeah, that's what I work for.
Yeah. And so like, it was like, there was a whole big step in between me and the people. They had no idea.
Wow, because like some of the stuff that was turning up in these commercials wasn't material that was even on those Ultra Lounge CDs or whatever. It was like somebody that had a really hip record collection and knew this music was a music supervisor that was telling people what to do. And I just assumed it couldn't have happened without somebody like you guys. So yeah, it's like one of those crazy things that for 20 years I've always wondered. So there you have it.
Yep, a lot of hip music supervisors. What's Jonathan's name who worked with Eddie at Bug Music?
Jonathan Palmer.
Yeah, people like Jonathan Palmer. Was he in Love Jones?
Yes.
Yeah.
He is. He's
Yeah,
they're still rocking and rolling.
See, it could have easily been a guy like Jonathan Palmer was placing music like this. Yep.
Joey, I work with Chris Tedesco. Like we hired him on tons of sessions. He's a lovely guy.
Yeah, great guy, great person to work with.
Yeah, super talented.
Thanks and hello.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Mike.
Otto.
And just anyone out there who wants to grab the Booze, Babes, and Bongos album, I put the link in the chat. Anybody else, hands raised, or any of the
there's another one, Joey.
There's another one.
Jones.
Talk to the hand.
Jones. His hand's invisible though, because it's the same color as his background.
Oh, sorry. Oh, I see it now.
It's Jones and Wendy. Oh, okay.
Hey, I actually raised my hand so long ago that I don't remember if I had anything pertinent to add. I just want to give a couple of hellos. Seymour, nice to see you. John
Hi,
Alwyn,
John.
nice to see you. Otto, hello. Nice to chat with you online today and yesterday. And Joey Seehee, way over there in, what is that called? Down under something?
That's good.
Lovely. Okay, I want to give credit to one credit, and I wanted to jump in earlier, but I didn't want to interrupt anything. The Blast Off with Joey cover, the original artwork was done by the magnificent Pat Tierney, but the overlays on it was actually Photoshop.
Yeah.
It was done by my lovely roommate, David Landry, also known as DLX, who was not on this call. But I did text him a photo of that during this call, and he sent me back some photos of us during that time. I just wanted to say that.
Thank you.
I wanted to jump in a lot during this, but I specifically wanted to say to Otto, I can recall going to Tiki Party at your house in Venice, I believe, in the 80s. So
that's how I got into the Tiki stuff. I wasn't into Tiki stuff in, 1984. I was going to punk rock gigs, like the Dead Kennedys at the Olympic Auditorium,
right.
And going to alternative music shows with you, indie music, like a Club Laundry or whatever.
I wanted to prompt that little bit of the conversation because I recall going to your backyard party. I believe when you were dating Trixie, and long time ago, that you worked at the newspaper in Santa Monica.
Yeah. Yeah. So I had that backyard party starting like 87, I think. We did 10 of them. So it ran for, like nine to 10 years.
Sounds about right. Because every time I ride my bikes through Venice, my bike, Wendy rides her bike. We cruised through that area of Venice. Where did you live? I can't remember the street.
I lived in Venice, but closer to like the Santa Monica airport, like off of Rose Street, but on the other side of Lincoln, the unhip part of Venice. It's near like, Mar Vista. But yeah, me and a roommate moved from, West LA, and then we moved into this place in Venice and it had a backyard. So we started throwing a party, and he was a architecture student at SciArc. So he was into modernism and into Googie. And he said, we're going to have a tiki party. And I said, okay, great. And he explained what it was. So rather than a luau where we might be expected to roast a pig, we could just have a tiki party and just have rum and pineapples and Hawaiian shirts. And so I would just thrift massively as much as I could, like right before the party every summer for like 3 months. I'd try to get everything bamboo or Hawaiian shirt or coconut mug or whatever. And I ended up with, after 2 or 3 years, I had all this tiki stuff. And then people would come over and go, what is all this stuff? Like, what are you collecting? What is this? And I'm like, it's tiki stuff,
That's the story that I thought should be included in this.
Thank you.
I remember going to those backyard parties, and we had kind of come out of the punk rock era where a bunch of us had been into rockabilly and that sort of stuff. And it just seemed like the natural sort of progression. And I remember going to Otto's backyard parties in the late 80s. And anyway, that's it. Like I said, I didn't really have a specific question. I just kind of wanted to.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Bring that up.
Yeah, absolutely. And it makes sense. Like I was talking about in our last session here, was that, so much of it was rooted in punk rock. I also trace vintage clothing stuff and thrift shopping to hippie era. And then you get punk rock came out of it. But like really what happened with punk rock, you had thrift shops, you had rockabilly, mod, all these different subgenres of underground rock and roll going on, alternative, and different ways to rebel.
Yeah.
So like kitsch and tiki was just a whole another other version of like rebelliousness, or right, or like how to push people's buttons and like mess with people a lot of the times.
Hey Jones, it's Josie. I want to say thank you too for bringing that up, and please give DL my best. And he spent so many hours, as you would probably remember, on that thing. But you also played a part in a pretty important thing, at least in my life, when you got Bill Bottrell to record Korla, when we put him on that 45 and we needed a studio and you came through. That was really awesome, because I think he did it gratis as well.
That's funny because first of all, I've forgotten that, but I do remember when Eddie Vegas, when Bill was throwing a party at his house, at his studio, and Eddie came, and Bill was, for anybody who doesn't know, Bill Bottrell was like a top tier producer. He produced Michael Jackson and Madonna and all kinds of shit, and he threw a big
wrote Santa Monica Boulevard with Sheryl Crow, right? Didn't he?
Yeah. He wrote Sheryl Crow, right? Exactly. He did Sheryl. But here's the thing: he threw this big, swank party at his studio, and Eddie shows up at the studio and he refused the valets. He's like, oh, no, I parked my own car. And Eddie came in and sang for all these like top tier music industry people who had no fucking clue as to who he was or why he was there. And it was pretty damn funny. And and of course it was, Eddie didn't really have, he was kind of, at that point in his life, I think he was kind of a little bit out of sorts. He didn't really understand what he was doing there or why. He just thought it was karaoke. And so
showed up.
Just showed up to sing karaoke. I believe you invited him there for that. I didn't know that Bill recorded Korla. Or if I do, I didn't remember that part. But
excellent. Any parting words from the other?
Sam Wick has a question.
Oh,
right.
Sam.
Mm-hmm.
Where is Sam? Thanks, Jones. This is excellent. Good stuff.
Hey, Meredith.
Sam Wick. Hello, Sam Wick.
I just wanted to say thank you to everyone so much, because Sam and I met through the lounge scene and partied a lot through the lounge scene. And it is so great. Oh my God. Senor and Joey, he basically married us and made for the best fucking wedding ever 20 years ago.
Wow.
I feel like seeing you guys here tonight and all of you, that maybe we'll stick around for another, 20 years. 3 kids running around here. I wish Shag was on here. Invitation and showed that as well, and just so many memories for an old lady now who can barely remember anything. And Joey, why do you look exactly the same?
He does. He totally does.
It's the lighting. It's all about the lighting. He's doing the Andy Warhol thing. Andy Warhol said, if you make yourself appear old looking when you're young, it never looks like you're getting old when you're actually old.
So working. Thank you guys for.
Does that mean that Joey shaved his head from like the earlier part? I just lost.
Yeah. I thought you were Dominic Priori without my glasses.
Oh yeah, he does. That's an insult,
right?
by the way.
Mm-hmm. That's
well, that was meant as an insult. Thank you, everybody, for showing up. Senor, Otto, Josie, my other Joey, because everyone used to get us confused, and sometimes we would get gigs because of it, or sometimes we would have an enemy because of it, because someone thought I was him and he was me. So,
We're still gonna do the Joey versus Joey show one of these days.
Yeah, one of these days, down under. Any parting words from the three of you?
Just thanks everybody for showing up and
thank you everybody.
Taking your time to do this. Otto, thanks.
Part 2 or 3.
Oh, we'll probably have to figure this out. Yeah, because there's plenty to go around. There's plenty to discuss, and I'm going to be putting this on the Jump with Joey Altruda YouTube channel, where you could go there and see the rerun here or see the first version that was the private behind closed doors version. Thanks everybody. If you want the album, click the link here and I will put it in the description in the YouTube channel as well. Thanks everybody. It's been great and we'll
Thanks.
definitely do
Thanks
it
for
again.
Thanks,
Bye,
Joey.
everybody.
Yeah.
Bye, everybody.
Check you later.
Bye,
Bye.
Lisa.